Hello. Let's talk about fentanyl. Now, this is a very serious issue to everyone. Young folks, middle-aged folks, seniors, and it's important to understand what it is and the dangers it poses. Now, what is fentanyl? Fentanyl is a powerful synthetic opioid. That means it's made in a laboratory, in a factory, at a manufacturing facility. Not from the poppy plant. It's not extracted like heroin and opium and morphine. And now it's similar to morphine, but it's much, much stronger. It's about 50 to 100 times stronger than morphine. In medical use, fentanyl is used to treat severe pain sometimes. It's often after surgery or before surgery for chronic pain conditions. It's prescribed as patches, pills, or injections. So this is some dangerous stuff, but it's got a wide use in the medical and pharmaceutical industries. The illicit use creates illicitly manufactured fentanyl and illicitly sourced fentanyl. It's very easy to make as long as you have access to the chemicals. And this is what makes it extremely dangerous because it can be made quickly. Also, overproduction from the pharmaceutical companies gets misdirected. Things marked out of date suddenly appear halfway around the world on a street and served up to some teenage child. Now, the illicit stuff is made in illegal labs. It's made in laboratories and is often mixed into other drugs. It's included with heroin. It's included with cocaine. Counterfeit pills are made from it. And because it's so potent, even a tiny amount can be deadly. Sometimes people are also mixing it into things people smoke, like marijuana, hashish, opium. Now, how it's used, how do people normally use it? People might unknowingly consume fentanyl, as we have already known, when it's mixed into other drugs. They might think they're taking something else, but it could be laced with fentanyl. And the idea from the drug folks is twofold. First of all, they think that if they can get you addicted while you're using cocaine, you keep going back, it's got bigger bang for their buck and everything. And the second thing is there are people that are actively interested in killing Americans. Because it's so potent, it's easy to overdose on this stuff. You might have heard the phrase, one pill can kill, one pill can kill. They're talking about fentanyl, they're talking about heroin, they're talking about all sorts of opioids. Overdose occurs when the drug slows down the breathing to the point where it stops and the person essentially drowns in the air. The dangers are extremely high risk of overdose. It's got an unpredictable potency, making it impossible to know how much you're getting and at what purity. It's often hidden in other drugs, so the person might not even know they're taking it. If we take a look at the overdose numbers, it's important to understand that the opioid crisis is very serious, and fentanyl right now is being touted as being the main driver of the increase in overdose deaths. And there are some key points I'm going to go over and information gathered from the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention provides data on drug overdose deaths. Here's a general overview. Drug overdose deaths have risen sharply in the past 10 years, with fentanyl being a major contributor. The rise in overdose deaths is largely due to synthetic opioids, primarily illicitly manufactured fentanyl. And according to the CDC, way back in 2023, there were 105,000 drug overdose deaths that are recorded. Synthetic opioids, mainly fentanyl, the primary driver of these deaths. Now, this number, 105,000, is extraordinarily high, and the number keeps climbing. And a serious problem with this number is probably lower than what it should be. Many coroners in the United States are not doctors. They are elected or appointed to their position, and they will write down on the form what they are told to write down. Sometimes, out of kindness they feel to the family, they will record the death as something other than an overdose. And that does two things. First of all, it might assuage the guilt or the problems of the family, but it also falsifies the documentation that we need to identify the seriousness of this problem. It has delayed the seriousness of the response to this problem. It's very difficult to separate out exact numbers of illicit versus prescribed fentanyl overdose because many overdoses involve multiple drugs and because illicit fentanyl is so often hidden in other drug supplies. It's also used when it's prescribed at home with other prescriptions. It's kind of hard to tell. And I'm telling you, someone just said, did I forget to take my pill today? Takes 2 of them. They could push themselves over the edge and die. So being very careful with what is prescribed. Do you really need the fentanyl? These are all questions you can discuss with your doctor. These are all questions that you can answer yourself. The latest data from the CDC shows that while there was a decrease in overall deaths, the amount of deaths is still extremely high, and that was from 22 to 23. The way the data comes in is very slow. So key points to remember: the majority of fentanyl-related deaths due at this time are recorded as involving illicitly manufactured fentanyl. But remember, there are different reasons and different things that are put on the death certificate. Now, counterfeit pills are a huge risk as they contain deadly amounts of fentanyl, and even small amounts of fentanyl can be lethal. Now, what can be done? Awareness is the key. That's what we're doing right now. Educate yourself and others about the dangers of fentanyl. Go ahead, send this video over to them. Send them to the CDC website to see if they can pull the information about this. Watch videos, watch movies, it's all out there. Keep some naloxone, that's Narcan. That's a medication, keep that around. It's a medication that can reverse an opioid overdose temporarily. It's important to have access to it, have it around, especially if you know someone or suspect someone from using drugs. Now, if you have to use it, you still need to call 911 right away. If you find someone that's incapacitated, call 911 first. Then administer the Narcan. And just because they may revive doesn't mean they're okay. They still have to go to the hospital because within 20 minutes they're going to start to decline again. That was extra information. Now there's 2 types of fentanyls that people are concerned with these days. It's pharmaceutical fentanyl and illegally made fentanyl. It's important to understand that for both of them, the recipe is exactly the same. Sometimes it's made in other countries. Sometimes the things called precursors are made in other countries. And then they are brought to the United States as the precursor. That is the things used to make it. Then they take them over to a lab and whip up a batch, which is then distributed in an amazingly complex and effective distribution system. This is beyond, when you start learning about this, it's really, very, very concerning. Now, powdered fentanyl looks like many other drugs. It's just powder, and then a white powder normally. And then the pills can be of any form because they get pill presses and machines that can pump them out thousands in a minute, just like at the factories. In the past, these things used to be much more tightly controlled, but these days that's not the case. It is. Okay, now synthetic opioids like fentanyl contribute to nearly 70% of overdose deaths. Even in small doses, it can be deadly. And over the past few years, non-fatal and fatal overdoses involving fentanyl have continued to rise. Now, even though it's non-fatal, the person's not dead. That's good, right? No, not always. The person can be physically incapacitated for the rest of their lives. The person could also be mentally incapacitated for the rest of their lives. The person could be physically and mentally incapacitated for the rest of their lives. For the rest of their lives. Test strips are available to people who use them. They're inexpensive. They give results within 5 minutes, which can be the difference between life or death. And if the test is negative, the individual still needs to take caution because test strips might not detect more potent fentanyl-like drugs like carfentanil. And that's another issue. Thanks for listening today. Fentanyl is a serious problem. All opioids are a serious problem. All drugs are a serious problem. Please do what you can. Thank you.